Hello, Dr. Valerie. I want to congratulate you because that's new for you, right?
It's so new, Michelle, that I sometimes pinch myself kind of going, A, did it happen? And also B, how come it feels like it was so long ago when it was just the 6th of November when I went through the doctoral hooding process. And my book, the actual printed dissertation, just arrived yesterday. So yes, thank you very much for the congratulations.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start with a fun fact. I like peppering in fun facts, but you go and tell us about what you do, why we're here talking, what your doctorate is about.
Thank you. I love talking about myself.
Most people do.
So I have just completed my doctorate in consciousness and human potential. So that's my title, Doctor of Philosophy in Consciousness and Human Potential. And that's a
Mhm.
path I've been on for almost 2 decades, which have been about how do we help elevate the vibration of the planet by helping to elevate individual vibrations, starting with me. I mean, I needed a
Okay.
lot of vibrational shifting.
Okay. Sure.
And so I noticed in my life that things were just a little bit kooky and not exactly what I thought I was working toward. And there
Mm.
was a period where I was kind of like, why is my life my life? It didn't make sense to me. Although it was really great. There were lots of successes and lots of money and lots of accolades and lots of champagne and lots of trips and lots of diamonds. I had lots of baubles. And still I was kind of going, what does this have to do with who I am? And is this all I'm here for? And I went on a many
Mm.
year spiritual journey to kind of understand the meaning of my life, not the meaning of life, but just what
Okay.
am I
Of yours, right?
of my
What am
life?
I
Like me,
doing? What am I doing? Right.
well, what am I doing? And also I had noticed that I didn't really like who I was being. And so
Okay. I get
beyond
that. Yeah.
beyond the doingness, there was something going on with this instrument of what supposed to be an instrument of love that I was not
Mm.
using that way. I was not using it as an instrument of compassion and tolerance and unconditional love. And so through that journey, I started noticing there seems to be a through line, regardless of which spiritual teacher with whom I was working or who I was reading. It seemed like there was a through line. And that through line is what I distilled into my book and started teaching. And so I had a university course based on the book called Living 101, Being Happy and Whole. The book is called Living Happy to Be Me, Dancing Your
Mm.
Soul Lifestyle. It's over my shoulder. It's 160.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's been a wild ride. Wild in the sense that I believe that awakening to the truth of who we are
Mhm.
and and therefore understanding the conditioning, the negative conditioning, the patterns of false identity, those
I
kinds of
love
things
that.
are like, they're there and they're not always fun to delve into. And yet the payoff is so fantastic when you get past that little surface level of this is who I am.
And recognizing that it's a pattern that is not serving you too, I think is potential too, right?
Absolutely, Michelle. And that's the hard part sometimes, not all the time, not in general, but sometimes, because deciding that something's not serving me when it's gotten me the house in the right neighborhood and the
Mm.
dream car and the
Oh
great
man, you're speaking
title.
my language. Yeah.
Like, okay, so like, really, is it not serving me? Because some of this stuff is pretty freaking awesome. And like, why can't I just get more of this stuff being that person? And so
Mm.
discovering the false self and how it's actually in the way and where it
Mm.
came from, how it got built up, and how I got attached to her, or
Mm.
in some cases him, because I had a very
Yep.
masculine energy
Mhm.
in the false Valerie. And so the journey can feel heavy, but it's not. It's
Mm.
interesting. A lot of people tell me they don't really want to do the journey because they're afraid of what they'll find. They're afraid they'll
Mm.
fall into some pit of despair and never come out. Um, and that it's just heavy and they don't want to deal with the heaviness. And I totally get it. I get it. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But I'm here to say it's pretty awesome.
I got the. I survived. I made it through the other side, and I'm in this beautiful liquid pool of happiness. Is what I'm hearing.
I survived my awakening.
That's funny. That's awesome. We have Jen listening in from Australia too. I thought that's what she just sent us a note. Thank you, Jen. It's good to see you here. Thank you. You know, it's let's see. I think so. I'm in Eastern time. I can't remember if you're in Pacific.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So I think they're 12 hours from me. It's like almost 12 hours, which maybe it's a little more because that would be really early her time. I'm not sure. I wanted to throw this out. I don't know if you've heard of this, but I was Googling ahead of time because I like fun facts. And so I threw these in here. Did you know there's a World Happiness Report? Is that interesting? Yep. Okay, you knew about that?
Read it every year.
Oh, yes. Okay. So that's a fun fact. I did not know that. And then according to the New York Post, I'm looking at my other monitor because I don't have this stuff memorized. The United States, it says this country is the happiest in the world, even during COVID-19. I'm like, what? That's a fun. Does that sound right to you? Or not? Like, maybe not. Okay.
No, I mean, the data that I've read, we're not even the top 10. So,
okay. Well, then this information that I see is probably no bueno.
I don't know. I don't want to denigrate the data because I could be wrong, but usually what I see is that Denmark tops the list, and there are a lot of other countries that have happiness as their gross domestic product, right? They actually look at a happiness quotient for their country, and it gets into things like how happy are you with your work or the neighborhood you're living and the people you're with, and how do you define happiness, and getting beyond money that we make and those little, what I call in my book, false elixirs of feel good. They give us that like momentary excitement energy, and then it's kind of like, okay, now what?
What's interesting about that? Go ahead. Sorry. No, I was going to say what I find. I think there's a little delay, but what I find really interesting, and Jen says it's 8:21 a.m. So just so we know what time it is in Australia. Yeah, she's starting off the day right. So what I find interesting about where this conversation is going is or where it could go. I know I identify with an old pattern of success and achievement and promotion, and that's shifted for me a ton. And that it took a while for me to figure that out. I placed my own worth with that achievement and the promotions and the money, and then something started to shift where it was like, do I need this? Do I want this? Why do I have it? And my own personal experience was I was a achiever because I wanted to provide. I didn't, we grew up with very little, large family, and I didn't want to be in that situation. So I just learned the pattern of just make more money, make more money, make more money. You won't have that problem. And that served me for a long time until it didn't, right? Until it didn't. And I think that's what you were alluding to earlier. Am I right or not?
Absolutely right. I mean, it can be different for different people, what the reasons are, the underpinning. So for me, a soul born into an African-American body, for me, the impetus was stuff around self-worth, but self-worth relative to being a Black person. So the things that I heard in the negative conditioning bucket were things like Black people have to work twice as hard to get half as much, which is an interesting concept. And by the way, data suggests that that's not false, but it's not necessarily
not false, or it is false.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. It's there there's plenty of data that shows that it's true.
Got it. Okay.
And to build my life on that truism, which led to being driven, which led to also a false sense of lack of lovability, lack of worthiness. The way that I was raised in the 60s and 70s were my real formative years. So think about what was going on in the United States, in the idea of race and culture and ethnicity back then. And so that as the pot that the recipe of me was being spun in, it created some ideas, some interpretations in Valerie that meant I'm always going to have to work hard. I'm never going to be valued for my character or what I do, contribute, as much as I'll be devalued for the color of my skin. So I'm always going to be at a disadvantage no matter how hard I work, no matter how much I prove myself. And so, and these weren't conscious thoughts. Nobody sat me down and told me these things.
Sure.
These are just,
learnings, behavior, observation,
environmental backdrop that you start to go, oh, I see how this works. And every child does it. We all have these conditioned patterns of responses to things in the environment, and they're not necessarily deeply true that you have to follow them all the time. And so I was the same way as you in terms of being driven to prove myself worthy of every gift. And as soon as I got one, it was like, okay, shelf, now it's time to get on to the next one.
Like, right. Where's my next coin or token or party favor? Right. Exactly. Treat, please.
Exactly. Penny for your gumball.
Right. Hence dopamine and social media, but that's a whole other topic, right?
I didn't even have social media back then. It was just, and always walking around. I don't know if this is true for you, Michelle, but always in the back of my mind, I used to have conversations with my girlfriends about this over a glass of wine. This low burn fear of still everything I'm doing. I was the captain of the teams I played on. I was promoted very quickly in my career. I got vice president running almost $1 billion portfolio very quickly in my career after my MBA. Certain things in my life were really positive and they surprised me. I was like, oh, how did I get here? But still, all this low burn energy of fear underneath all of it. It's all going to be taken away. They're going to notice maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Or maybe, I did have people tell me, well, you don't sound Black. Like if they met me on the phone first and then they met me afterwards, there was this noticeable, like, oh,
they were surprised or shocked. Like,
it's like,
not who I expected. Interesting.
Right. Oh, you didn't sound Black. And it's kind of like, well, does it matter?
Yeah. Good question. How did you respond to that? I mean, what was the response?
My response was usually a nervous sort of uncomfortable laugh, like oh really, like what? I really wasn't prepared. Now I would answer differently, but back then I wasn't prepared.
Stepping into your power now, how would you answer it?
I would say, really, what do you mean by that exactly? So I would lean in. So I wouldn't make the person wrong because why?
Help me understand.
Exactly. It's like, I'd love to know what you mean by that. Like, what were you expecting based on the way I sound? And now that you know that a Black person, can sound like I talk, does that change the way you think about anything in that constellation of ideas?
Yeah, and perspective.
For love, not a beacon for retribution or resentment or anger or frustration. I can be a beacon for love while I maybe allow someone to open up their blinders and notice themselves. Like it was me that it was there for. So I take those opportunities much more sacredly now. I don't feel I have to put someone in their place because they offended me. And before, that was part of the energy of me. It was pretty sharp. I feel like I've rounded my edges and opened my heart.
I think, well, and I think you mentioned it earlier, compassion plays into that too, right? I know as I've gotten older and grown, and my own spirituality and my own emotional and mental well-being, I'm able to show up in a way that I can lean in with compassion, and that's going to make me happier. I don't have to stand with my sword in hand, right? like, okay, now we're going to do battle. Are you ready? Right? Because
Right.
they said whatever they said to me. I mean, so I slip into that still occasionally because you stress response.
Right.
But I think some of it is compassion, and I think you also said, so undercurrent, was there undercurrent of fear? For me, it wasn't fear, but it was the lack of stillness. So just continuously working because I'm rewarded and not being still and centered with who do I want to be and what is truly going to make me happy? Or is this, I'm just going to just rinse and repeat for years. And I did that for years, until, decades, right? I drew decades until, there was this nudge, this poke, this, say, hey, hello, I'm in here. I want you to pay attention to me, right?
Exactly. I write about that in my book. I talk about the head and the heart and how to come into integration, and that my head was wanting to go in one direction, which was all about analytics and things like that. Very little compassion, not connected to my heart at all. But my heart kept calling, like tip, tip, tip. And sometimes my heart would stick out its foot and trip me. I'd fall and smash my face. And still, I didn't always listen. The big thing that caught me was I was in a meeting in the vice president role, and in the middle of the meeting, people started looking at me and they were like, something's going on. And so I said, does anybody know the symptoms of a heart attack in a woman? Like very methodically, very much still in my head, like, I think I'm feeling something, but when I would have feelings, I would describe them using my intellect, not using my heart. And so that's what I did. Does anybody know the symptoms of a heart attack in a woman? People were like, are you having a heart attack? Like, I don't know, because I don't know the symptoms.
I don't know what it feels like.
Exactly. So give me something I can read, then I can go, got me. And so anyway, long story short, that was the beginning of a long, fun, dynamic, wild ride to being living a different way of being who I am.
Nice.
The truth of who I am, and releasing and forgiving the false self.
It's funny how you remember those moments, right? I mean, I think for me, when it shut, because I was being nudged, poked, like, hello, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I put it on my list and went about my day, right? Yeah, I got shit to do.
I love lists.
I'm like, sure, it's on my list. I'll get to it, right? But I don't. That's totally true. I mean, it was a goal in 2017, and by 2018, still haven't gotten around to that, right? And so I think what's funny is that I watched Chasing Mavericks. I had watched this with I think I had watched it myself. My mother had watched it. My mother came to visit and she wanted my aunt to watch it. And she's like incessant about it. And so I'm like, it took us 45 minutes to play this movie, to actually get this movie to play. And I almost just like, this is too hard. So there was 5 minutes in that movie that I needed to hear where the older surfer is talking to the younger surfer about, what it takes to be happy and achieve and do whatever it is that makes you who you are. It is essentially, that was the piece. But he talks about for the pillars of, so physical health, mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health. And he gets to, he's explaining those. And he's like, the last one, spiritual health, admittedly a bit rusty. I have some work to do. And I'm like, God, that's what I need to hear. Come on, you got it on your goal sheet. Get your act together. So that is what, and so then it started shifting. And I did those pillars. I did it in the reverse order. So it was physical, mental, emotional, and then spiritual, in that order. And if you flip it, right, if you start with the spiritual, the other stuff just kind of falls right in line, or so it seems. I don't know if that's your experience, but I did it totally ass backwards.
Okay. So, well, here's what I will say. First of all, it wasn't asked backwards. It's whatever way your life is speaking to you. You did it perfectly.
Yeah,
And
nice.
I do believe that none of us is wrong until we figure it out. We're just on a journey
Yeah,
until we figure it
true.
out. And then the spiritual part. So we're back to my dissertation, the effectiveness of transformative self-mastery skills in post-secondary education. I created a curriculum that's very heavily spiritually focused. So it's a course, be Living 101, Being Happy and Whole, Living 102, Happy and Whole Practicum. There's some other dynamics in there, but it's very heavily focused on spirituality. And part of the question was, will college students resonate with that? Will they be interested? Will they register for the course? Will they stay for the whole 10 or 12 weeks? And what will they experience? Or will they feel like this is weird and only
I'm
weird?
tabbing out. Right? I don't like this. This is woo-woo weirdo stuff. Right.
And strange.
Right.
And so that was one of the questions. Will they actually resonate with it? The other question was, if we help them do a more holistic approach to life, meaning, you're in college, but you're more than your intellect, which is what I never got that. No one ever told me that.
More than your job, and you don't have to necessarily. So if you don't have a job, it doesn't mean that you're not valued.
Or if you have a job and didn't go to college, doesn't mean that you're less valued.
Exactly.
And so it was all about this social emotional learning in post-secondary education. And there's not that much in post-secondary. There's a lot in K through 12. But once you get to college, it's sort of like, okay, now we're just going to focus on your brain. And, that's that's pretty narrow. That's not exactly the way it is all over the place, but it's not a part of a degree program's number of credits that it takes to graduate, that you understand who you are, that you understand how the world works. Like, hey, there is more than just physical laws that govern the universe. Like gravity, great, but there's also law of attraction. There's also law of reflection. There's also law of gratitude, law of karma, law of reciprocity. Those are spiritual laws. And so how does a student learn to live in a world where they're only taught about half of what's really going on? And so that's, for me, I did it differently. So spirituality was always a part of my life, but I hadn't done it deeply enough to really understand what was going on. So it was always underneath there. I always had positive thoughts. I read Norman Vincent Peale's Power of Positive Thinking, and some of the real spiritual gurus in my teens, like 13, at my grandmother's house. These are books she had on her bookshelf there, and I would read them. And still,
but it was here. It connected here. It went here. Is that accurate?
It was head knowledge. It wasn't body to a certain extent. So I did pray and affirmatively, but I prayed in some cases more of a begging request, and I waited until it was really, dark, instead of just making a prayerful countenance be the way that I move through my life. And so it was there, it just wasn't deep enough, and I wasn't embodying it enough. So, and the students I've worked with and the clients that I've had, it's sort of the same thing. Although I will tell you, I have had students who've been atheists. And so they came to the class and they were like, I heard about this from a friend. I'm an atheist. Are you trying to convert me into Christianity or something? And I'm like, couldn't care less.
Right.
Like here to offer what has worked for me. You can pick and choose. You can do it all. I'm not trying to convert you. And they ended up staying in the class and coming back for the 102 class. So
Wow.
something out of it, I won't say, and it was never my goal to convert anybody. So they
Well, and
got
they
something
took
out.
the pieces that they needed at the time, is
Exactly.
that accurate? Okay.
Yep. And
Nice.
I was careful about not being too overbearing with, using God and things like that. I talked about the universe. I talked about higher self. And so it works for people where they are. You meet them where they are and show them what's possible and allow them to make the choice, like sovereign beings, conscious beings of choice, as one of my mentors would say.
What is your thought on tools and strategies for someone on this journey for happiness, whether it's at work or in their life? And I mean, we both were tapped in some way. Like there was something nudging, like tapping. And
Kicking.
so someone, yeah, right, kicking. Eventually that happens, right? So I was talking to
Oh my gosh.
one of the gals, right, that we were connected to. One of the gals I'm connected to, she was one of her spiritual leaders said, you can learn the lesson now, and it might be a easier lesson, or you can wait and it's gonna knock you in the back of the head, right? I'm like, ooh, I think I'll pick door number
Heather.
1.
Heather, please. Heather, please.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right, please. I mean, sometimes I actually do need to be hit with a brick to get my act together. But what are your suggestions for tools and strategies if people are being nudged or prodded or kicked in this way, in some way?
So the number one strategy that I would offer is to let your barriers down, the resistance that you have to noticing that what you're doing isn't serving you. So that's the biggest barrier. That's the part where you need the 2x4 in the head. It's because you're not willing to notice yourself being yourself and going, and not in judgment and recrimination and punishment, in compassion and love and curiosity, and just saying, well, I wonder why I did that. A question that I use under this strategy is, who are you being when you think you're being you? Who are you being?
That's a big
you.
Question. Who are you being when you think you're being you?
And that's the number one
beautiful question.
Thank you. It's a number one question to get you into that strategy of curiosity about who I'm being, and then tracing it and seeing what's possible from that. So that's my number one strategy. Make your relationship with yourself, your self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love most important in your life. It's the only relationship you really need to focus on. And when you get that straight, you'll notice all your other relationships mirror that. It's universal law. It has to happen. So that's the number one strategy.
I love that. I put that question in the chat for people to be able to see that, because that's a money question. That is a money question for people to just explore curiosity. And if you're off center or feeling weird for whatever reason, whatever feeling you'd put in there that's off or bothersome, that's an excellent question to ask, because it opens the door for curiosity.
Yeah. What's really going on here? Is it really true that person offended me? Or is it really true that I've got some wound energy that seems to keep coming up when this kind of situation comes up? And what do I want to do about that? And how does that change who I be in a particular moment? And then does that change the movement of that moment into a place where it's fluid and flow? How do I get back in flow? So that's number one. I would say that practices that go with that, number one practice for me is silence.
I was just gonna get out of my head. I was just gonna say that is huge. That's been one that has been really beneficial for me.
Yep.
Agreed.
If you're new to meditation or have never considered it or tried it and think you failed, I can't do meditation, I would encourage and invite you again to just keep playing, just keep dancing with it, not make it a goal. I now meditate, but could you come at it from a place of, I wonder how silence would help me in this moment? And then another moment, I wonder if I could take a 2-minute pause, just breathe, what that would do for me in this moment. And I've not seen it yet that doesn't help people kind of evolve in their relationship with quiet and with quieting the head and opening themselves up to the rest of the magnificence that they are, having an
And
opportunity to talk.
what's interesting about what you say there is, and it could be because some people might think silence and go, that's hard. And another way to potentially look at that would be stillness too, because you could be still and maybe not necessarily silent, but not just the act of not moving and taking action. That could be a sister or a synonym to that, possibly.
Totally agree. So even the word meditation, I stopped using it all the time because people just like recoil.
They freak
Meditate.
out. They're like, that's hard.
So I love what you said, stillness. Like be still and mindful is a phrase that I say. Be still and mindful. And that just means allow this powerful brain. And we absolutely want and need our brains. It's not about annihilating the ego. It's about having this come under the heart, have it be in service to the heart. One of my favorite quotes about this head-heart integration is from Albert Einstein, who, somebody I would consider having a big brain, like he's a
massive,
like, brain-trained guy who said the conscious mind is a faithful servant. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift. We've created a society that worships the servant and has forgotten the gift.
Nice. That's good. That's
really good. Love it.
That was Einstein said that?
Albert Einstein.
Wow.
So who knew? I have it in my book. Yeah. To me, it's about integration. And that's what he was talking about, that the brain can be in service to the heart. And so when we can quiet the chatter, I got to do this, I should have done that, I wish I had said that, I wonder what's going on over there. We can just take a breath and allow it to quiet. There's always going to be thoughts because that's what the brain does. It generates thoughts. Yeah. It's about allowing them to kind of pass through us like clouds. And that's where that stillness, the centered stillness, does that. It's like, oh, there's a cloud, comes right back to the center. Oh, there's a cloud, comes right back to center. So I do like what you're talking about in terms of, can I use stillness instead of silence? Yes.
Yeah. This reminds me of a quote from Michael Singer, and I want to make sure I get this right. The mind is where the soul goes to hide from the heart. And the first time I heard that, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Michael Singer, it's Untethered Soul.
Michael Singer, yeah, Untethered Soul, yeah. So
that's a beautiful quote too. The brain is where the mind goes.
The mind is where the soul goes mind is where the soul goes to hide from the heart. The mind is where the soul goes to hide from the heart. Like, yeah, when I first read it, I'm like, oh boy, that'll smack you in the face.
Yeah. In a loving smack, right? I remember the first
it's like, pay attention.
The first time that I got that message, I was doing a form of yoga, Dan yoga, DAHN, which is a Korean form of yoga. And I'd bought this yoga membership and I was going to this center near my house and I was so excited because I thought I was like really the shizzle because I was just into this. And the Jiwangjanim, who is the master, comes over to me and he said, you should set up a private. So I did. And he kind of, did a study of my body and everything. And he goes, you are a walking head.
Oh my gosh. That was not a compliment, right? You're like,
no. I was like, what does that mean? And he goes, you are a walking head. All of your energy stops here. You're very articulate. You're very intelligent. You're very analytical. And there's nothing going on beyond here in your body.
How did you receive that?
I received it in like sadness because I thought that I had been living an embodied life.
Yeah.
And so It was one of those wake up calls. If you're willing to hear it, like, and if you can receive it, and I received it as, okay, so what do I do now? And so I started doing some private study and doing a bunch of things. That was part of that journey that led to my book. And what I'm doing now is this: how do I do embodied living instead of head only living? It's hard. I mean, we live in
It
a
is.
society. The
That
society
rewards it. That rewards it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Rewards it, right? Promotes it, throws money at it. Yeah, I get all that. Yeah, I get all that. It's true.
Yes,
It's
indeed.
true. This has been an amazing conversation, and we could talk about this for hours. I know. I
Yes.
think that, are there any other, well, before I say any, this is my next question. People think that meditation, there's just one way to do it. And I ran across a gentleman that there are countless ways, and it's to, you hit this earlier, play around with it. It could be dancing. It could be any number of ways to define what stillness or silence or connectedness means for you, that leads to happiness at work or at life, and figuring it out. So, for those that are watching now or later, that's, it can be scary to think of that word, but it's like dancing. It can be that, right? There's any number of ways. You got to figure it out for yourself.
Yes.
What other things would you, if there's anything else that we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't cover, or do you want to sneak in before we say goodbye to everybody?
Well, one of my other favorite quotes is from Seneca, who was a Stoic in like 6th century, who said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And that quote is on my email signature. And what I encourage and invite your audience to think about, and what you just said, was there are lots of different ways to meditate. And the idea is that you dance in it and play with it until you create the methodology and the time frame and the sources that work for you. And that should be a journey of joy. It should be a journey of discovery. It's like, can we go back into our young child who's just learning how to hold a crayon and like pick up purple crayon and play with, how would I like to meditate? How would I like to change the way I eat? How would I like to get more rest and sleep? It's like to remember that your life is not static. It was never meant to be. We somehow get this idea we need to get to a place, the end of the goal, boom, get
and then
there.
We've arrived.
Hold on. I've arrived.
And then you're arrived and you're like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Exactly.
You're like, oh shit.
It's really about saying, okay, I think for this time of my life, this is what I'd like to do. And then, you know what? I tried it. I don't like it so much. So I'm going to tweak it this way. Or I'm going to talk to someone else who does it differently. Or I'm going to abandon that and go for this. And I think the world is ready for that now. It depends, generationally, older generations are used to, like, it's hanging in and getting to a particular place. Younger generations are more tasters. They're tasting from the buffet. And I encourage and invite everyone, young, old, to go back to this childlike wonder with your life, and into the going to the buffet and serving yourself little tasty bites until you kind of quilt together what works for you today. And
that's
then
a nice
tomorrow,
visual. I like that. Quilting together what works for you today. And it's giving yourself permission to play around with it, and the exploration of it. That's what creates joy, I think. You're leaning into all kinds of interesting things because you're willing to change your perspective, or you're willing to lean in and see what could happen as a result of that playfulness.
Yeah. You're willing to say, oops, not so much playfulness over here. I think I'm going over there, without making it feel wrong or bad or stupid, or I should have known better. Why didn't I see it? It's not about any of that. It's just about, in the moment, it's not feeling good. I want to feel good. Wayne Dyer would say that's a sign of, I want to feel God. I want to feel good. I'll just go over here. Abraham Hicks says the same thing. Chase the good feeling. There's plenty of it out there. don't sit in the bad feeling, blaming it on whatever. Just go, oh, okay, not happy, moving.
Yeah.
Our happiness is our responsibility, nobody else's. So
Amen. That's true. Yeah.
coming
I
up with
love
a
that.
formula should be a fun dance.
And the formula is not the same for every person.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't steal it from your friend because it might not work for you. You can try hers, right? Maybe it works. I don't know. Or you might need to add some additional ingredients.
Yes.
That's awesome. Oh, thank you so much for this today. This is a beautiful conversation. You are absolutely delightful. And this is so much value for people that are watching now and that will watch this later. So I love it. Thank you so much for doing this today. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. I've totally enjoyed this. And if it can help your audience, I feel even better. So thank you. Thank you.
It will. It will. I will. And I will send you the video too, so that you have it. So you have it too. Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. You have a fantastic day.
You too. Many blessings.
You too. Bye.